Yeah, this is a new Zoom.
Did they send a link
But
out?
he's on it.
Yeah, he's on.
But he's on. Maybe he's asking for somebody else.
Webpage you sent for public.
I just forwarded them
Oh.
to Brian.
Okay, thank you.
I am on, but the public needs an ID number to get on.
IT just forwarded to you.
No, you saying public?
Yeah, they forwarded, yeah, he forwarded him the credentials for the public. He just said
It's on
that.
the webpage.
Yes.
It should be on the page, webpage, so they can
It's
click
in
it.
the exact same spot that the old link was in,
Okay.
just under council meetings, and it says in big red capital letters.
Mr. Thornton, did you hear that? And there's a lot of members of the public on right now, so I think they're okay. They should be able to get on. It's on the
Okay.
webpage.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I am here as well. I apologize if I'm interrupting anything. And once again, I'm here as John Lombardo.
Okay.
I didn't know you had a double.
All right, it's 7:31. Do we have a motion to resume?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions opposed? I think it was Mr. McGinley and then Mr. Lombardo. Okay, meeting is resumed. We had Ms. McBride at the podium. If you want to come back up.
We don't need to do roll call.
Yeah, let's do it just in case. We'll do a roll call. But you can still come up. We'll just left off. Go where we left off.
Mr. Venus, are you present?
Present.
Mr. LaScavitch,
Present.
Mr. Lombardo,
Here.
Ms. McDermott,
Here.
Mr. McGinley,
Present.
Mr. Mitchell,
Here.
Mr. Perry,
Here.
Mr. Thornton. Mr. Thornton.
Here,
Mr. Urban,
Here.
Mr. Willovich.
Here.
Ms. Rainer.
I'm here.
All present.
I am here.
They heard you, Brian.
We gotcha. We got all 11 of us to come back, so that's great.
I thought about leaving.
All right, did you want to leave off? Did you want to start, Mr. Oskavich?
So we're in a discussion about why Blue Crest wouldn't be able to. So some things come up, and I said I'd like to read emails concerning that. But since Dan is here right from Blue Crest, I would like to hear from him what the issues were, so we can all make a informed decision.
Mr. Oskavich, we can't have an outside vendor speak. There's
She
public.
made accusations, and I think he needs to be able to defend himself. And then will we be violating his civil rights, not allowing him the opportunity to speak at a public meeting?
I don't think we can allow that. He's not on the agenda. Another vendor's not on the agenda. We don't have him scheduled. I don't believe we can have him speak. Attorney Steve?
So I think we stick to the
Blue
agenda.
Crest is not the party that was involved in that situation. That's, all right, so Blue Crest.
I'm just saying,
just
I
so you have it
understand,
correct.
so then we should be considering Blue Crest because they weren't involved.
I'm
It was
just
like,
trying to make sure the clarification,
exactly.
they were not involved. We don't have, there's no issue.
Blue Crest is involved, okay?
Nothing, no.
Okay.
You get it?
I was told we can't have another vendor speak. That's not on the agenda. This was run back and only this. And I mean, if another person came up, but I mean, I was told we can't allow outside vendors to speak at this meeting. If we want to invite him back to another meeting, I would do that. We could send a link, you know, and invite him at a meeting. But if you wanted him to speak at this meeting, I would have needed an email in time to add this to the agenda. It's like adding an agenda item. I can't add a
It
vendor.
would be a sunshine. Sunshine.
Well, then, so we can make an informative decision, I say that we haven't come back. Because I think we need to know and get to the bottom of what was suggested.
Okay, does anybody have any other questions for Ms. McBride? Okay, does anybody have any questions?
Gentlemen's.
Yep, for the representative from Runback. Did you want to come to the podium? We'll see if there's any questions. Thank you. You know, a couple council members expressed that they had questions earlier. Who wants to start? Mr. Chairman?
Just to try to get answers of some of the issues that were brought up from, pretty much it was all repetition And of course, those concerns, it is a concern. What about the shredding of ballots supposedly in Texas? And I'm not sure what other areas. Is there a problem with shredding ballots? You know,
I missed what county was mentioned there, but there, to my knowledge, I haven't heard anything about ballots being shredded in Texas. So which county was that in reference to?
I don't know. And again, this was just what some of the public was mentioning.
No, I heard it too, but
Yeah, I don't know.
it's not something I'm familiar with.
And what about ballots, envelopes having to, like different ones having to be used? Is that something that's going to be specific to your machines?
We are a ballot printing company. We have the capability of printing send, return, secrecy envelopes, ballots, instructions, I voted stickers. We've been doing that since 1972. There is no package or promotion or anything that requires purchase of ballot sorting equipment, mail ballot sorting equipment to go hand in hand with that other service.
So we could use.
You
card
could
system?
use, yeah, you could use, in fact, yeah, whatever printer you want.
Okay, all right, so we don't have to buy anything specifically from you.
Well, you're welcome to,
Yeah.
but you don't
We
have
don't
to.
have to. And then the cost, and I think Ms. McBride had mentioned why the cost is more for our county than other counties is because of the number of ballots that are price is based.
There's a lot of things that affect the price of the equipment. There are a lot of options on the equipment. Number of sorting pockets is an option. If the county expresses a need to sort to a certain number of precincts, that equates to a certain number of sorting pockets. If the county expresses a need to have an automatic opener, ballot envelope opener, that's something that can be added on. If the county has a need for software that will help with confirmation of signatures, we can add that as an option. So there are things that affect the price of the machine, but it's really my job to determine what the needs are and make sure that it's going to cover what those are that are being expressed.
So it doesn't cost more just per ballot? Does that play a factor in it at all?
No.
And then-
Well, are you saying that because you run a certain number of ballots through it, it's going to cost more than if you run a different number of ballots through it, mail ballots? Is that what you mean?
Sure, yeah.
There is really no equating the cost to that. The only thing I could possibly think of is if you have a large number in each cycle, you may need to change the printer head more often that prints the date and time on the envelope. But that's it.
What about ballot replication software? And I'm not really sure exactly what that means, but again, that was something that was brought up several times from the public.
Yeah, I heard of that too. The mail ballot sorting systems that we have don't have any ability to replicate ballots. They're mail ballot sorting systems. They don't print ballots, they don't count ballots, they don't replicate ballots. They don't do any of that. I was just confused by some of that stuff. That's not something that they do.
Okay, and then again, just going back to, there were no problems that you know of the machine ripping ballots, not reading or scanning them? You don't have
Correct. The 22,000 ballots being shredded, which was repeated several times earlier, is not a situation that I'm familiar with in Texas or anywhere else. In fact, I don't even know how the machine could do that personally, just based on how it runs. 22,000 ballots would take, at 18,000 ballots an hour, would take an hour and 15 minutes to run that many ballots through. It just doesn't make sense to me that that could happen.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Venus.
very briefly, just two quick questions. Sir, my first question is this machine isn't counting the ballots, it's just sorting them. Do I have that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the only other thing is the term of this lease, or the term of this purchase, I should say, and the additional things that come along with it. I believe it's for the remainder of this year plus 5 more. Is this standard or is there a shorter time that is used in other places?
It's a standard, purchase and software maintenance agreement. The 5-year term is what we use. I have not been involved in doing any more or less than that 5 years on a new purchase since I've been with the company.
All right, thank you, sir.
I have a quick question. I'll let you go in a second, Mr. Scavenge. If, so some members here mentioned that if, things change with the legislature, that we might not have mail-in ballots, or at least not this many mail-in ballots in elections moving forward. So if that were to happen and we were in this service agreement, what would happen if we wanted to terminate the service agreement maybe a year or 2 years from now, instead of all 5, if we didn't have the volume of mail-in ballots?
Well, again, it goes back to what I just answered about the term of the maintenance and software agreement. It's standard 5 years. So if we're going to go outside of that, I'd like to just talk with you guys about what that possibly could mean and how we could accommodate you guys. I'm just trying to help to do the best thing for the county. So if not signing for 5 years is in the best interest, then just help me to understand why. How many ballots could it be if things change after this election? Because from what I understand, there's always going to be a certain number of mailed-in ballots, whether they're mail or absentee, even if things change. So I just want to make the correct recommendation. So do you know what that number would be?
I was asking on behalf of just some council members that they said this machine would be a doorstop after if the legislator changed, I think was the exact word. So I understand that, we have the machine, but I was just asking about the $35,000, for each year. If we weren't using it, or if we weren't using it to the volume that when you mentioned that the legislature, we might have new people elected, Act 77 might go away, we might not have these mail-in ballots. So essentially that would reduce the number by a lot. So I was just kind of being the devil's advocate and asking what would happen if we wanted to terminate the service contract maybe a year or 2 in.
Well, it's something that we want to work with you on. It's not something that I've lived through before, but again, my entire job is to try to help the counties that I work with. I'd rather handle that up front than to try to make a decision on breaching a 5-year contract that we all agree on. I'd rather just try to hit that up front.
Right, okay. Mr. Scavenge, did you have a?
Yeah. So the problem occurred in Tarrant County.
What equipment were they using?
They were using your machine.
Which ones? I'm not familiar with the scenario, so I just would need that information to answer.
Your ballot scanning machines are rejecting about 1/3 of mail-in ballots returned by voters in Tarrant County.
We don't sell ballot scanning machines. We sell mail ballot sorting machines. What's the source?
CBS News.
So read it again. I'm sorry.
So this involved Hart, Intercivic, and your ballots that were printed.
So it wasn't our equipment?
It doesn't.
Hart,
say
Intercivic is a tabulation vendor.
It was scanning issues, yes. So it doesn't say whether it was your ballots or if it was, does not get into that.
So Hart, well, I don't work for them, but I know. Yeah, they're a tabulation company. Yeah. We're not a tabulation company. Tarrant County, Texas. I don't know the last time we printed for them, but I don't know how it's hard for me to comment.
And then the 1200, I believe, is Harris County. That's all right.
Again, I'm not familiar with either one of those scenarios of our equipment doing anything like that. I'm just not. What, do you have any other details on the Harris County? Because we work with those counties.
Harris County, the way it was relayed to me.
Are they a Hart County as well?
they went back, they had part reading the ballots, but they had, it's my understanding, for almost 30 years, they tried to. And then they switched over years and they switched right back because of destroying the ballots. That's what it is.
Okay. I know that we
But it
have,
wasn't 22,000. So.
okay. If you give me the ability to look into that, I don't work directly with Texas. I know that we have relationships with Tarrant and Harris counties. But those are situations I'm not familiar with. And the first one, just from what you read, it sounds we've never had a ballot sorter. So
Yeah, they're not nailing it down in the article as far as whether it was your ballot and it didn't scan
I
properly.
mean, I'd be happy to give you the director's phone number there and you can ask them directly about it. Harris County as well. I don't know what else to comment on.
Okay.
Any other council members have questions? Mr. Lombardo?
Let Mr. Willoughby go
Oh,
first.
sorry.
That's fine.
Sorry, Greg.
So what makes your equipment sole source?
Our equipment is election-specific equipment run by our own software that is specific to us, specific to elections. We are in our space a sole source under those characteristics.
So another company does anything similar?
That's election-specific? No.
What is the definition? I'm sorry.
We only work in elections. Some of the other manufacturers mentioned work in other businesses, finance. I think somebody mentioned the Pentagon. Our equipment is designed specifically for elections. Our software is designed solely for elections. We only deal with elections.
So no other company deals with elections, not specifically, just at all.
I didn't say that. I said we only deal with them. I don't know of another company that only deals with elections.
But other companies, so basically you're saying that's your only business is elections.
That's what I'm saying.
So, but you're saying you're not saying that there's no other companies that deal with elections. You just deal primarily with elections.
No, I said we only deal with elections. We don't
So-
deal with any
so
other
sole
businesses.
source. So
We
basically-
solely deal with elections.
So there could possibly be other companies that also deal with.
Well, we've talked about companies that do deal with elections, but do they also sell stuff to the Pentagon or other places? Where's their focus? I mean, I don't want to get off topic. So does that answer your question?
I don't think it's on topic. Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Perry? Or-
No, want to go, that's fine.
I got
I
a
think-
couple of questions, if I may. Software upgrades, et cetera, that covered in maintenance agreements.
Yes, sir.
So as we move forward, there's a major change.
Absolutely.
Software programming, et cetera, that's all covered under that.
Absolutely.
And you're working with the short voting system now from the state of Pennsylvania currently.
Yes.
And, the needs that you design the equipment for, how did that come about? I mean, how was that decided, what needs should be part of the equipment? Am I clear? Or
No, I follow you. Most of the design and the development of not just this, but many of our products came about as our counties and jurisdictions that we service needs changed and grew. I think that would pretty much cover it. We work in conjunction with these jurisdictions. If they come to us with a need that is a feasible thing that we could provide, we try to give it to them.
I may deviate. Right. So, this machine and software, et cetera. Does this mean all the needs that you're looking for in the election departments?
Yes, it does. And you have already worked to integrate with Short, correct? Which is the new system that the state is rolling out at the beginning of next year.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Really quick, but I know a couple other council members brought this up. I had concerns about this too. And again, kind of going back to our contractual need with your company. You know, we do have the possibility of having, you know, a change in leadership in the state government, which will potentially abolish Act 77, which allows for mail-in voting and several other things that, you know, that people find concerns with. So if we eliminate that, I mean, and let's just say for sake of argument, we do say, okay, well, we don't have a need for this machine anymore because the amount of mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, whatever that come across to us are not that significant that we would need a machine to count them. What would be our recourse? Would we be able to work something into the contract in reference to that?
I'd be interested in reviewing that language with you guys. Absolutely. It's a bit ambiguous, kind of what you're asking. though. I mean,
Well, just basically saying, if we want to return the machine after the election because we won't need it anymore, can we do that if we negotiate
We
that?
haven't.
Is there another instance of that happening?
No, there hasn't. The only thing that I could say that might be close is as mail volumes have increased, we may have provided additional equipment as a trade up kind of thing, but not in the other direction. It just kind of goes back to what I was saying about, I'd rather put this all out on the table and get to a point where, we know exactly what it is you guys would need in the way of contract terms and see if we can make it work. It's all outside of what we do.
Want to let Mr. Urban go because you already went and then we'll go back to you. Thank you.
So I'm going to, first of all, go on the record and state that honestly, I think talking about electric equipment here at the county council meeting is probably out of our lane. I mean, this should probably take place at the Board of Elections meeting beforehand. All of this should have been negotiated or at least adjudicated in their forum before coming to us. We're pretty much just a funding mechanism here in the county, not the people that should be deciding on the equipment that helps conduct elections. Under Title 25, that is their ball of wax. They kind of run the show when it comes to conduction of elections and registered electors. And that is under Title 25. And somehow or another, I know our solicitor seemingly just, or the Office of Law, tend to forget that there is a Title 25 and Title 53 when they wrote their opinion and send it to us. But, quite honestly, I think there should have been an RFP process done. I think it's unfair to other vendors, whether or not they're solely in the election space or the sorting business. They have sorting machines and they might be multi-purpose, which actually is more beneficial to any county because they're focused on an abundance of different avenues to utilize their machines. So if we're only using the machine twice a year for elections, maybe part of the year we could be using it to sort mail, which makes a lot of sense that way the machine's getting used. Putting the cart before the horse, there was no budget. There's no GL code really that brings money in yet. If the grant comes in, it's probably going to go in our general fund. I don't know how legally we're able to spend money before it even comes into the county, before it's even voted on within the county. I mean, we've never actually spent money before budgeted proper GL in this county, especially anything over $25,000. Price wise, I mean, I was looking at Lehigh County. They're getting a machine. I mean, they're 50,000 more people population wise, but their price tag is, probably a third less than what you're quoting us here in Luzerne County. I take issue with that, and
I would too.
Lehigh County, was quoted less money. And, I think their annual maintenance is either 10 or 15,000 or 35,000. So, that I have a problem. And this shouldn't really be negotiated here. I think, like I said, this should be tossed back to the Board of Elections. This is not the proper forum for this vote. I won't be in support of it at all tonight, and I think it's a legal issue, quite honestly, because I think the Board of Elections could turn around and sue the county council for buying a piece of equipment that's not in our wheelhouse. I've taken issue in the past when council voted on voting machines with Mr. Petry's advice, totally just threw out the committee's recommendation. People like Mr. Ouellette, who served on a committee a long time ago when that wanted hard intercivic, and Mr. Petry unilaterally decided to change that and go with the menu. And then when they bought the ES&S poll books, and like I said in the past, I mean, it would have been a vote that I would even disagree with my own father, who sat on this council and was a commissioner for 12 years, and 8 years on council. That council does not have that legal authority to go and negotiate anything election-wise in this, under this home rule government. And I've read you Title 53 a few times. I've sent it out multiple times. And quite honestly, I think maybe it might take it. I'd rather take an outside vote or a vote to go outside of the office of law and get a better opinion, because I think it, quite honestly, we're doing an injustice in-house by putting us in this predicament on trying to adopt a contract or buy a piece of election equipment when it hasn't been vetted through the Board of Elections. They could have agreed on it, but they didn't vote on it. They may have talked about it, and the majority may have supported it, but they didn't publicly vote on it. And that's a problem. You know, quite honestly, the Board of Elections has a lot more powers. I keep saying this, than people want to give them. But that's a law. I mean, there is no asterisk here in Luzerne County or in Pennsylvania state statute that says, with the exception of Luzerne County, we can do our own thing because we have a charter. Charter just basically is the composition of how we make up our government, how we make up the individuals that are on the Board of Elections, who we have in the executive branch. We are the legislative body, they are the executive branch, Board of Elections, and they pretty much do the conduction of elections. And if they ever took a public vote and said, we're taking our power back, we don't want your admin or chief of the division of admin to be our clerk, we have our own clerk, that's going to be a conundrum. That's going to be a conflict. They have under the law the ability to choose their own clerk. They have under the law the ability to create their own budget. And the proper process should be that they create the budget, pass it to the manager, and in October, the manager passes it back to us. Unfortunately, that's the way this government is set up. There's not the continuity of the commission form.
Mr. Urban, do you have any questions for the gentleman on the podium?
So why the price difference between Lehigh and Luzerne? Why so much?
There are two different models of machine.
Why would you spec out something higher for us and something a little bit less for them because they're bigger?
It's just based on the needs that they expressed to me. It's as simple as that. So I have 3 different machines.
So why the choice of the bigger than from our executive branch? I mean, we have less population, but we want a bigger, more bells and whistles. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Sure, our election bureau staff is small everywhere.
Mr. LaScavitch, did you have questions?
Yes, one more. Is Runback Solutions the broker, and are you purchasing this machine from Engineering Innovation? And then also,
We are partners with EII, Engineering Innovation, company out of Indianapolis. I wouldn't consider us a broker because we handle all the service and maintenance, but they are the manufacturer of the machine with an exclusive agreement with us to distribute it amongst the election community.
and you own your own intellectual property.
The software that runs it, yes. We purchase from, yeah, they're our factory basically.
But do you own?
Do we own EII? No, we do not. They're their own company.
Okay.
Anybody else have questions? All right, thank you so much for coming in, Sonia. Any councilors have anything to add?
I'd like to add, I did talk to Senator Lisa Baker today, just to ask her if she was involved in that TV. And I wanted to get her opinion on what she thought about the machine.
Just because I don't think you have a microphone by you.
Thank you. So I spoke with Senator Lisa Baker today and I asked her about the machine and she said that she felt comfortable. She thought that it's something that we should do because we need to not make a spectacle out of ourselves again at an election. We need to have the ballots counted by the end of the night, not going into the next day. Senator Doug Mastriano asked her and another senator to vote for the bill so that he wouldn't have to wait days for the ballots to be counted. So it's something that's important to them. She just said if there was ever a problem with the machine, we should just make sure that we had that in the contract that, if we weren't satisfied with the machine, that we should be able to have things, corrected on it. But again, going into waiting days for election results is not anything that any of us want to ever do. in going forward. So how do we correct that?
I just have one comment.
Sure.
I'm at a loss because I don't understand, I guess, totally how this machine is gonna benefit us. With the understanding that we have 6 short machines, which we were told that maybe we could have 4 to scan ballots. So if that's the bottleneck at the end of the run, it's only gonna go so fast. Am I correct or am I wrong?
It's 18,000 an hour, right?
No. Then they have to be scanned. We only have the sure scanners, right, to count the votes.
Could you speak to that?
Yeah, the whole purpose of this machine is to totally eliminate that manual process. So the machine would do the work that the short terminals are currently doing. So 18,000 roughly mail down packets per hour.
Just to separate,
I'm sorry.
just to separate, they're not gonna count the ballots.
They give the voters credit. Yes. They don't scan the ballots, they don't count the ballots, they give the voters credit in the short system. Just as you would by signing into the poll book at a polling place. That's what we do at this point manually at the beginning of the process, not at the end.
Really, it's just a $500,000 barcode reader that basically puts the person's name into a computer system that says that they sent in their mail-in ballot. That's how
And I'm just curious if there is an issue with the machine. And we try to ask questions, is it proprietary and we're gonna be looking bad and then we can't investigate that machine?
Oh, that's a question. Can I just ask that really quick too? Will we have on-site technicians or for the day of the election? I don't know if we're planning on having it if the machine were to be purchased. Is that something that we would have for the day of the election?
We do offer on-site service.
Of course, there would be training done and technical assistance, at least if it wasn't on site, but to be able to have that on the day of the election, that's when it would be important. Okay, thank you.
The only thing I want to just add to this is that we have elections employees of the county that are telling us this system meets their needs. So we constantly some of council's kind of been battling what's our role? Are we overstepping? It was an entire debacle this week. And I think we have our employees in an office that are tasked with a job that now we're telling them because of this grant, they need to have all of this counted by 12/01. They're telling us what we need and we're sitting here questioning it and we're not the experts on it. So it'd be the same thing if Road and Bridge wanted some sort of equipment to work on roads. And we said, no, we don't like that equipment. We wouldn't ask the engineers, well, we think you should have cheaper equipment. We would take the experts' advice on it. Same thing, the Office of Law gives an opinion to say, we don't like that legal opinion. We have offices and employees of the county that do these jobs for us so that we're not interfering in day-to-day operations. And I understand, a level of due diligence and looking into things, but now we also have our county manager and the elections office that's telling us, hey, we're not comfortable putting our name on this grant money and accepting it in good faith if we know we can't fulfill it without this machine. So our county manager, who was on earlier, I don't know if he's on right now, as well as our deputy elections director, because we don't have an elections director right now, they're saying that in good faith, we can't accept this money because without this machine, I can't justify losing $1 million. It's $1 million coming into the county. And we're saying that we have a machine that could make sure this happens, allowing us to keep this $1 million. And I just think that'd be the right choice. Now, the county manager, like he said, if we don't vote for the machine and we don't take the money, we'll figure it out. We won't have $1 million and we won't have a machine and we'll figure it out like we have in the past. And things are a little shaky. We haven't been able to count them by 12/01, in the past. So that's where I stand on it. It's $1 million. It's like coming. How do you say no to $1 million coming into the county?
Quick question. Just want to ask a legal question real quick. Attorney Skeen, how do we bring money in and spend it before it's even budgeted? And council did not vote to bring this money into the budget or put it into a GL line item to allow them to spend money. So the money could come from the state. It's sitting in the general fund at this point, but really it's $1 million that has not been appropriated in any sort of way, cut up, split. There's no GL code for it. I think it's a misappropriation of funds at this point because we have not voted to consummate bringing in that money, budgeting that money, going back out on two sides of the equal sign. There's no GL code for this right now. And so you're talking about purchasing something that hasn't been RFP'd. You're talking about purchasing something that hasn't been budgeted. It's an unbudgeted expense. It's like an IOU back to the county. I've never ever heard of government doing that in my entire life.
I don't know that any of that's being done. I know that the grant was applied for.
Right.
The grant was issued. And at the last meeting, there was discussion about having an ordinance, have that line item added to the budget.
But we haven't done that yet, so it's putting the cart before the horse. We're spending money that hasn't been appropriated.
I don't know that they're spending, I don't know what the terms are on the sale.
Neither do we. We don't even have a contract in office.
Well, I think the contracts will be negotiated, but they're not going to negotiate a contract until after the vote.
Yeah, we're getting this the votes to give Mr. Robertson the authority to execute the contract. Mr. Thornton, I see your hands up. Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Rado. Just a couple of points. I don't want to repeat everything that was said tonight, so I won't. Everybody can hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, based on what the gentleman said from the Runbeck Corporation, that does not make it sole source, and that's what we're all hanging our hat on here tonight. If it's ever deemed not to be sole source, this council will be sued and we will lose. Sole source, he said, because they solely deal with elections. And that's why we're picking them, because they've done this before. Many of the competitors out there deal with elections, but they also deal with the Pentagon and they deal with other government agencies in other states and other matters. That should not preclude them from bidding on this project. That would be akin to Larry Plesh or our county buying asphalt only from a company that produces asphalt. If there's other companies locally that produce asphalt, but they also produce concrete and they also build bridges, we're not going to get a bid from them because they're not sole source. All they do is produce asphalt, and that's what we're looking for in that particular project or endeavor. So that's a very risky stretch and a leap if you're hanging your hat on sole source tonight. And that seems to be the only argument put forward tonight by the administration, including Mr. Robertson, that is sole source. Because if it's deemed not sole source, and this is a risk we're all taking, then why are we not bidding it out? We are violating the bidding laws, the bidding codes, and it is an extra $200,000. I want to just quickly address the points that were made earlier. There's a lot of talk tonight that if we don't get this Runbeck machine, all the votes need to be counted by midnight, and that probably won't happen. Well, I got an idea. Buy the Tritech machine for $200,000 less. It will be done. They'll be here, like Mr. Lescavage said, within a week. It'll take them 3 to 4 hours to hook into the SURE system. This has not been said. They have hooked into the state election systems of many states around the country. I hope everybody at the table realizes every state has its unique election computer system. And they have hooked into every state without problem or issue everywhere that they do business with. It is absolutely not a problem or a challenge to hook into the SURE system. And we are not taking a risk or chance by going that route. Heck, you're talking about $200,000 extra dollars. And the fact that he could not answer the question at the podium tonight, Mr. Lombardo, you had a very good question. You know, if we don't need it after this election, would you consider taking this machine back? If there was any possibility, he would have said, yeah, that's a possibility, but that, you know, everything was like, well, that's never been done. That's an ambiguous question. What does that tell you? They are not taking this back. It's not renegotiable. You guys, everybody, including me tonight, if it passes, are voting to skirt the bidding requirements as required by law. And we're taking the taxpayer money right now, paying for this thing and getting reimbursed by a grant that we may be able to keep or may not be able to keep. What if something else happened on election night that precluded us from counting the votes by midnight? What if it was an act of God? Does the state recognize that? If we can't count the votes by midnight, and it wasn't our fault, it was an act of God. Is that written into the law anywhere? I hate to hang our hat on this sole source, which is very ambiguous, and I'm just gonna finish up with this. If all of you were willing to spend an extra $200,000 on a machine that we could get another machine for 200,000 less, based on the legal expertise of Ms. McBride and County Manager Robertson, and based on the vague and ambiguous guidance from our solicitor, Harry Skeen, well, good luck. Because I talked to a bunch of citizens, mostly from the southern half of the county, the past 5 days. They are prepared to go forward with a court injunction right away if this passes tonight, and they are going to sue. And I'm not going to be on the wrong side of that lawsuit with the hopes that it's sole source and with the hopes that we did not have to bid it out by law. I am not going to, especially when it involves $200,000 extra for this company. Thank you.
Speak to that. I have three things that I want to respond to that with. First of all, Mr. Robertson is the county manager that is recommending this. He's the county manager that we hired for his expertise on this type of thing. I'm not saying whether I'm voting for this or not now, but some of these arguments just baffle me. I spoke to Senator Baker about this bill, Act 88, prior to the machine conversation, prior to knowing anything about what they were going to buy. Maybe I do remember a vague conversation about the machine at some point, but she explained to me, and maybe she explained to other people who have talked to her about it, that the clawback provision and the 1201 provision is not necessarily, because it is ambiguous in the law, that they won't necessarily enforce it regardless of what happens. So if an act of God happens, if a tornado hits the Elections Bureau on elections night, the state's not going to say, oh, guys, I'm sorry, a tornado hit, but you guys didn't get the ballots counted by 1201. I mean, come on, they're not going to do that. If we make, she told me that if we put forth an effort, a good faith effort to make sure that the ballots are counted by 1201, if they're not counted by 1205 or 1230 or whatever, they're not going to come for the money. And even if they do, our only obligation to pay it back would be that if we don't receive the grant the next year, which is bad, obviously. We can't refuse $1 million. I don't think we should anyway. We're not in any position in this county to do that, especially if we don't want to raise taxes. So, I don't understand that argument. And I don't remember what the third one is now, but that was on a roll. So I apologize.
Any other members of council? All right, if there's no other members of council, we have a motion by Mrs. McDermott and a second by Mr. Perry. Can we have a roll call, Ms. Orange, please?
Mr. Venus,
No, sorry.
Mr. LaScavitch,
No.
Mr. Lombardo,
Yes.
Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Thornton,
No.
Mr. Urban,
No.
Mr. Wilovich.
No.
Ms. Radel,
Yes,
6-5, 6 yes, 5 no.
motion passes. We now have public comment on non-agenda items.
I don't know the third thing that I wanted to say now.
Non-agenda items.
Can I speak about this thing that just happened?
Yeah, I have two slips that have, let me have them go first. Non-agenda, hold on, I know I have two here. Mr. Rabo?
Once again, political expediency rules the day in Luzerne County Council. I'd like to, I would love to know the answer to the question as far as who the Wizard of Oz is behind the push for the purchase, because you said, Madam Chair, you're listening to the election office and the deputy director of their expertise, but she has no experience in running elections. So she's, in essence, Luzerne County's version of Kathy Buckbar. So I don't understand how you guys could, on Tuesday of just last week, say about the Dropbox ordinance funding that it would be, and Mr. Vice Chair and Ms. McDermott, you said about litigation. You're worried about litigation. This right here, what you voted for, is going to cost 10 times more to the county in a lawsuit, guaranteed. And as far as Mr. Kentucky of the county manager is concerned, because he says about Google, let me tell you my background. I've been serving on municipal authorities for 8 years. Okay, I understand the bidding process. And if he wants to be hokey as far as accuse me of Google search for just my research, he's just not only ignorant, he's just downright clueless. And I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, like I've given every other county manager since Bob Lawton. And what does he do? He just tries to make pedantic excuses based on, oh, I'm just here this, like, what is it, 70 days, 75 days, whatever. He said he ran 7 cities. I find it very difficult to believe he ran 1 efficiently, because if he's willing to hire someone who has 0 experience in running elections and then turn around and say, oh, I trust her experience, how is he an actual administrator that is effective? I'd like to know, because as a board member of a public authority before, in terms of a utility and the redevelopment authority, I'm like at a loss here. So I hope you got your T's dotted and your I's crossed, and Mr. Steen's got it handled, because I can tell you right now, you're going to lose.
Some council didn't care about that last week, so.
Well, you're going to see coming up with this bid.
Thank you, Mr. Rabo. Mr. Bush? Okay, Mr. Fitzgerald, did you want to go?
Yeah. I agree with Mr. Rabel 100% as far as the ineptness of our management. I'm in business, have been most of my life. There is no way in God's green earth would I give someone 2 weeks experience to say, oh, I researched this in my 2 weeks, and then let him spend it. It's like let a 16-year-old kid have your budget. This is ridiculous. It didn't go in front of the board. It didn't get elected. We didn't do the right procedure. It's ridiculous. What is it out for bids? That's the most stupidest thing I ever heard. And as far as Ms. McDermott, you saying Baker and John, I don't give a crap what Ms. Baker says. I called you and you didn't return my call. Glad you had time for Baker and not me.
Mr. Fitzgerald, don't call out any council members. Please address the body as a whole.
Well, and as far as the chair says, we as far as our staff, again, 2 weeks experience, and I've given away $1 million. We're not giving away $1 million. We could use it somewhere else. We just don't have to spend it. Number one, and I'm also sales and management. That guy's a great salesman. He is a contract is a contract. And anybody that's been in business knows you can't renege on a contract, right, Mr. Skeen? You can't renege on it. Once you sign this 5-year contract, he isn't going to give us a break in a year if it's a paperweight. We're screwed. Screwed. You should have negotiated before you gave him the money. And nothing in life is free. Nothing. Someone pays for this. And it's me. I'm a taxpayer. So nothing's free. So basically, this was a sham. I don't give a crap about the people of establishment that run this county behind the doors. I don't care about Lisa Baker. I don't care about PJ Perbula. I don't care about anybody but the citizens of this county. You blew our money. You threw it away. It's not your money. It's disgusting.
Any other members of the public?
It goes without saying that I'm floored. I really am. I would ask though, I think my only real comment right now is that I ask that before anybody mentions any other senators, especially when we have their phone numbers, their personal phone numbers, that you don't mention their name unless you know exactly how they feel on the subject. because you may not know exactly how they feel on the subject, especially about purchasing the machine. So right before an election. So I'd ask that each one of us watch what we say when it comes to other members of our state staff, whether it be senators, representatives, and such. That's all I have to say. I'm literally speechless. Really, I am.
Any other members of the public? I have a couple on the Zoom call. Val. Oh, they logged there.
I'm sorry, I was on here regarding the mail ballot sorter. I'm with Blue Crest, but I sounds like you guys have already made that. I was hoping to make a statement on that. So.
Okay, thank you. Vivian,
Hello, can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Okay, I just wanted to.
Sorry, wait, there was another Vivian on too. Can you just state your last name and the municipality you're from?
Vivian Kreidler Lucina from Nescopeck.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm too floored that you with Jake and spend $500,000 on a machine that all it's going to do is going to just tell you that somebody voted. We still have to take the machines, the ballots out of the envelopes. They still have to be counted. And in the last 3 elections, especially the Pennsylvania election, these were pretty much counted within the first 24 hours. So when these lawsuits come down, and as that one gentleman said from Southern Pennsylvania, that people are going to file a lawsuit, I'm going to be part of that lawsuit. And for you 6 council members that are due up for next election, you can guarantee your seats are going to be gone. I'm done with Luzerne County Council screwing the people of Luzerne County. We can't give people who own their own homes on the homestead, we can't give them any money, but we can spend $500,000 on a machine that does absolutely nothing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis?
Yes, I'm floored too. I can't believe for a moment these 6 yes votes, the injustice that you've done to the citizens of Luzerne County, the lawsuits that will be coming, then they will be coming. I'm floored too. I just can't believe what you've done here today. It's a shame.
Any other members of the public? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Abstentions, opposed, meeting is adjourned.